Welcome to this demonstration on how to draw a bird reflection in the water. I am getting started with some light blue pastel to create a base for the background sky. This will be a small 5x7 pastel painting on PastelMat gray paper. I would like to create a set of small paintings of the birds in the bird bath. My reference photo is from a site called Paint My Photo, and I won't be following my reference exactly. I'd like to create a blue sky and clouds in the background, and the water reflection will also reflect the sky colors. I will blend this first layer with a sponge applicator. You can purchase these sponge tips at Amazon or Dick Blick, and I will actually provide a link to these supplies in the description area. You can buy these foam tips in a package with a variety of shapes and sizes for your sponge applicator tool. Many of these tools are sold with pan pastels, but you can mix and match these sponge tips to replace them easily. Here I am adding a second layer of light blue to create a smooth surface to apply more colors over. One advantage of using PastelMat is that it accepts many layers of pastel. Before I add any color to the small bird, I want to add some color to the edge of the stone bird bath. I am using a medium gray pastel to create the base, and I'll blend it with my sponge applicator. It's important to have a base foundation before applying any details to your drawing. To establish my base layer, I'm using a cream color pastel for the light feathers on the bird's back and light head feathers. I will blend this color with my sponge applicator, which helps push the color into the paper. I will use a dark slate blue to draw the base color for the back feathers. It's important to start with a darker value, and once you have blended it, you will be able to add lighter colors of grays and light blues over the established foundation. I will blend this color to have a smooth surface to add more colors to. Next, I want to outline the darkest areas with my black pastel. This bird has some black bands running across the sides of his face and just above his beak. I will draw a few dark feathers in the crown of the bird's head and draw some black shading at the back of his head. I'll blend the black with my sponge applicator a little bit before moving on. I'm going to switch to a light gray for the lightest areas in the bird's feathers in the side of his face. I will blend this a little bit, and now I can move on to begin developing the stone edge of the bird bath. I'm going to start with a light terracotta color to establish some of the stone colors. I'm just using random colors to create the stone texture. I will use some little splashes of slate blue throughout the stone patterns, and then I'll blend this a little bit to give it a more smooth finish. I will switch to a light gray to add some highlights to the stone, and after blending I will switch to a green pastel to darken the base of the stone closest to the water area. This color is also used to emphasize the cast shadow created from the small bird. I am switching to a light caramel brown to add a little more texture to the stone, and continue to add some more stone texture to give it a more realistic look. I have been getting requests about the supplies I'm using for this project, so I will leave some links in the description area where you can find these supplies from Dick Blick and Amazon. I am going to draw the shape of the bird's beak as it touches the surface of the water. I'm also going to shade some darker areas around his face and neckline before adding light feathers to these areas that will extend over the darker colors. I've switched to a lighter shade of blue from the base foundation. This begins the process of building more layers of feather details. Since the edge of the bird bath stone is complete, I can begin drawing the feet of the bird. These feet are very small, so it's important to have a very sharp point on your pastel pencils. I'm using dark gray to draw the bird's toes, and I'm using light gray for the highlights and shaping the top of the feet. And then I will use my black to add some of the points of the nails on his claws. I'm using a little bit of white to capture some of the highlights reflecting on his toes. I am using dark violet to shade and add some feather details to the back of the bird's feathers. I am gradually working from dark to light to create a rich, thick texture in the overlapping feathers. I've switched to a light gray to create more of the patterns in the bird's feathers. I'm going to add some light gray feathers to the crown of the bird's head. They are slightly fluffing up as he drinks from the bird bath. I am going to zoom up a little bit so that you can see the development of the top surface level of the feathers are being drawn. It is very important to have established a dark base before developing the lighter shades of plumage on the back side of the bird's shoulders and wings. I am using a very light gray pastel pencil to begin creating the patterns that are showing on the surface of the bird's back feathers. I will follow the direction of the plumage and complete around the entire backside of the bird before I move on to the next layer of drawing the plumage. I am switching to a cream color pastel pencil to draw some of the patterns that are growing in the center of the back side of the bird. There are some small patterns of white that are very fine and delicate to add. It's important to have a good point on your pastel pencil and follow the reference closely to achieve the same pattern extending throughout the bird's back. The wings of the bird are pulled in tightly to its body, but there is a pattern arising from the folded wing with a band of white patterns. I will use my black pastel to define the wing area a little more. With my black pastel, I am going to darken some of the areas between the plumage to bring out the depth and texture we see in the bird's feathers. I am going to use the black pastel to darken some of the shadows between the bird's toes. Also, be sure to add the creases that form around each of the toes. Step back and carefully observe if some areas need to be of a darker value or lighter value. I am adding some of the individual groupings of soft feathers. This process requires a lot of layering to achieve the patterns in the fine plumage. I am using a light yellow to achieve some of the yellow plumage on his back. I have switched to a light blue to add some more plumage to the back side of the bird. The bird's plumage reflects its surrounding light and absorbs some of the light reflection from the sky. There are some unique patterns on the very surface of the feathers, and I want to be sure to capture these fine details. I've switched to my white pastel to add some of the soft, white, fluffy down feathers. Now that the bird's feathers are complete, I'm going to develop the background sky. I've added some ultramarine blue to the sky and some white clouds to enhance the sky. I would like to create a row of bushes in the distance that have a blurry effect. I've chosen an olive green color to begin adding some shadows and shape to the bushes. I'm going to switch to some white pastel to add a little bit more cloud coverage to my sky area. I'll come back to the sky to complete the bushes, but for now I'd like to move on and begin developing the water reflections in the bird bath. I'll use a little bit of black for the beak area. I will use my light gray to begin shaping some of the water patterns on the surface. I'll add a little more gray and blend this area with my sponge applicator. I'm going to add a little bit of the olive green to the water reflection. The bird in the reflection is a little bit distorted and is not a perfect replica of the bird it's reflecting. It will have some distortion from any water movement and will be a shade lighter than the actual bird colors. The reflections that will occur from the sky and clouds and trees will create a haze over the reflection. So I am following the same process I did with the real bird. I'm blocking in some of the darkest values first to form the shape of the bird. I'm going to add some light blue to the foreground water around the reflecting bird. I'm going to use some light green to indicate some of the reflections from the bushes in the background. I am going to add many of the same details to the bird's reflection as I did for the real bird. I will wait until the entire bird has been completed before I add any of the water reflections floating over the image. I still want to achieve the same details as I did in the original bird, but the only difference will be when I blend a surface layer of reflections over the bird. The sky and surrounding reflections on the water will create soft images floating on the top surface of the water. I think the mirror image of the bird is turning out very good. So the next step is to begin adding some of the surrounding reflections. I've already added some of the shading to the background bushes. So I do want to bring some of that color into the water surface. I am using my light blue to create a hazy reflection on the surface of the water. Then I'll switch to my white pastel to create some horizontal lines and some wavy lines in the water to indicate some movement on the surface of the water. I hope you have enjoyed this video on how to draw a bird's reflection in the water. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to click the bell icon to receive notifications of all my new videos. Thank you for watching, and be sure to press the like button and leave a comment below. Thank you, and see you next time.